Episode of the Orange Card Blue Card podcast. I'm your host Sam Tate. I'm joined by Timmy Two Belts himself, Tim Keefe. Thank you for joining me, man. A little late notice to have you on the show, so thanks for showing up for me.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. It was a bit of an empty Thursday aside from some packing, so I was like, I can do that Genshin event over the weekend. It's fine.
Yeah, it's kind of a weird week. We're right in between like a lot of the hype for Nats, a lot of the announcements for Nats and things like that. And you just did like your news breakdown, which, by the way, if you guys haven't, go check out the Satonis YouTube channel. He's doing a great job just like collecting all the information in one place to keep you up to date and provide a bunch of really helpful links. So I've been a big fan of those, so thank you for that.
Like when I first started those, I was like, I'll just do these twice a week. And after a little while, I was like, all right, there's not always enough news to do this twice a week. But once a week, you usually get like, at least 5 or 6 minutes out of it. And
yeah, so we had a lot of pre-release hype coming out, and everyone talking about their locals. We had the national dates actually just dropped today for the EU and Oceanic Nats. I don't have it do you have the date off the top of your head?
It's for people in the U.S. to understand. It's Thanksgiving weekend.
Okay, yeah.
That we already had the dates. We did not have locations. And they just announced, we couldn't find locations. We're doing it on webcam.
They announced they're online.
Yep.
Yeah, so it's super funny. I was talking, I was live streaming a bit earlier. I was showing off some decks that I've made and tested and mostly decided were not good enough for Nats. Mostly just, the gameplay kind of led you to the conclusion that this deck is too slow. But during that, I was talking with my chat. I had Lord Grimm, that Dabby guy, and he was talking about how they've got a day, but they don't know the location. And then like an hour later, Jasco dropped its online. So be really interesting to see who gets the 4 spots to the Pro Hero Championship.
It's eight European spots.
Oh, it's
actually.
8 in
8 for Europe and 2 for Oceania.
Oh, okay. I thought it was 4 and 4.
No, it's 8 US, 8 global webcam, I guess they're calling it, 8 EU, 2 Oceania, the 1 Jasco choice, and then the 5 slots at least to start of the HLC, the regional points rankings. And we'll see if anybody double qualifies, then I'm assuming those 5 spots drop down to the 6th and the 7th and the 8th. I'm selfishly hoping they do. I don't know what else they do anyway, but yeah.
So that's the big question I actually want answered, I guess, when it comes to if I could ask a Jasco employee, or if I could just ask someone in the know right now, what question is burning on my mind the most? It's how do the invites shake out, right? If you top 8 Nats, do you get to play in the online Nats? I've heard people speculate both ways. I've heard it pass down to the top ranking, so 9th place would get a spot and then 10th place.
Yeah.
But I've also heard that it might go to like 6th, 7th, 8th on the points charts, and I don't know which one's more fair.
Yeah, I don't think 9th is like really teenable, right? You don't necessarily want to, like, if you're going to pick someone from 9 to 16, you would want them to play out for it or something like that, right? Which isn't very practical, but
true.
Whatever they do, right, somebody's going to look at, well, this person got in instead of this person. Is this more fair? Is that more? They're going to base it on who got in and out instead of sort of systemically. I don't think they can stop people who've qualified from playing in these nationals, considering they're giving out promos that are worth thousands of dollars, right? So
right, and it does just seem a little weird, right? If it's an open invite, except for to just a select 8 people, and if they are giving out point? They are giving out like RLE style points, right? You can still
they are, but not almost not enough to matter. I think.
Okay.
I don't know if the difference between 5th and 6th is more or less than 6 points or 4 or 5 points. Right. But you can't get more than 3 points without just qualifying anyway.
Right.
So someone would have to make exactly top 16 in both events, and the other person, and whoever's in 5th or 4th, would have to entirely scrub out, and like not even top 32. So it's it would be pretty hard, because someone would have to lose both their top 16 matches, and the other person have to not make top 16 and there wouldn't have to be anybody else ahead of them qualifying and bumping the spot down anyway.
Right.
So I know I'm like 10 points behind the person in front of me and 10 points ahead of the person behind me, so it kind of just all points considerations is just can only possibly get out as far as 7th.
Yeah, I'm stuck down in like the 10-point hell. I just got 3 points from every event, so I'm at 12, I think, and I'm right there with people who got top 8 once and people who top 16 to every event. So
or top 4 once or whatever, second place once or something like that.
It'll be super interesting to see how it shakes down. I just want to know, right? I just want to know how it's going to shake down ahead of time.
Actually, I just sent in to take it today just because, like, I want to get an answer, just so that, like, obviously there's something I hope it works out in ways that are in my favor, obviously, but just to know, just so that, like, if it is going to be a certain way or not going to be a certain way, I'm not sitting around, in the middle of November thinking about, like, oh, do I need to make sure this weekend of December's free, et cetera, so.
And I didn't even think about the scheduling. I'm here in Vegas and I got nothing going on anyway, so I didn't even think about people who would have to like go, hey boss, I just want a ticket to Vegas for a weekend and a giant card game.
By the way, over Thanksgiving weekend, someone placed in a tournament in Europe and said that they couldn't make a trip to the United States on 3 weeks' notice, and that means I have to go to Vegas.
Right.
So, I mean, I would be happy to be in that situation. I would just like to know if that's a possibility, so I can explain it in advance.
Yeah, you definitely want to go into it with that prior knowledge. You don't want to get it. You don't want to be surprised by it.
Hopefully I just stop being awful and actually make top 8 at one of these things. But
that's the goal, right? It's kind of funny too, because I forget who it was, but I was listening to a couple people while they were play testing, and it came up that like the goal isn't necessarily to go all the way and win, right? If it's good enough to top 8, that's probably good enough for damn near every player out there right now.
Yeah. Although, well, that's certainly a lower bar than winning. You still have to think about, like, okay, I don't want to walk into a top 16 or, if we get enough players, a top 32 round matchup and get hard countered, right?
Right.
I don't want to run something that scoops Simonetta and then whoopsie, guess who your top 16 opponent is? Well,
right. Right. Yeah, it's a big thing for me is I'm very much looking at my going second hands. Something I haven't, especially in my hero, haven't tested a ton when I'm fishbowling is going second, just because of the nature of the partial mulligan and really block zones mattering a lot. Like when it came to standard, I could look at a hand of Guardian's final duties and go, this is fine, like pretty much regardless of my blocks of other things like that, and just getting your solid build out. But now
Swordfish Guardians, okay, I don't know what else is in this hand, it doesn't really matter.
And prior to that, it was Templar. It was like, oh, do I have Templar and like a Tiger Kick? Like I get to draw a card off that if based on how things go. So like there's all kinds of things when going second where you're not necessarily looking at like your foundation build. But now that they've changed the player one mulligan, I do think it's buying a little bit of time. I'm seeing a lot more like early 3 builds. I'm seeing people, especially when you have new training method, like I've seen people just play around, ready, get set, go now, because the player one build is almost certainly not going to be anywhere near as good as it used to be.
Yeah, and ready, get, set, go is still, like, that's still one of the biggest things that card does, is just get you around, new training method, getting you around, ready, get, set, go.
Yeah. Wild that it shares 2 symbols. Can we just point that out? It's incredibly crazy to me that card not only interacts favorably with it, but counters it, right? Builds around it.
Yeah, and for more talk about Ready, Get, Set, Go, if I may briefly plug, I believe on Monday we are going to do like a fun thing on the Rochester CCG stream where we put Ready, Get, Set, Go on trial.
I love
and just
that.
kind of do like a little and Kevin's gonna, whatever side Kevin's on is gonna win because he's way better at arguing than I am. But
are you guys gonna do like a coin toss so it's random which side you're on?
That would be a good idea. I think Kevin wants to defend the card, but
okay.
It's pretty funny because he actually wants the card banned more than I do, which is extremely rare.
Ooh,
but we're gonna swap sides for this.
I was about to say
Yeah. Jesse's gonna be there to understand. We'll figure something out. Maybe I can pretend to be sick and Jesse can take my place arguing against Kevin.
Yeah, when you said that, I was like, well, that makes sense. When you're talking about him defending it, because Kevin is notorious for at very least playing devil's advocate for just about any card that is banned. People talk about being banned or is otherwise insane.
And that is a thing about this game. Not to loop back to the our game stuff from earlier, but you can make any card sound fantastic by talking about the best anecdotes about what it did, and you make any card sound terrible about talking about New Training Method's just such a stupid, awful card, because I watched somebody once pick up a Faith Shield on their turn with New Training Method, flip it, commit it, put that Faith Shield in their hand, and then I built and passed, and they -1 hand size themselves to hold on to that Faith Shield for dear life. Like, good job, New Training Method. But then someone will talk about the play where they picked up the Faith Shield that saved their life. Like, oh my god, this card's amazing,
Yeah. Well, and it's plays like that where you have to recognize, the work that a lot of cards do is, especially the way that our board states are with the stage, is it acts as a deterrent. It's
right.
It's usually, I have been really bad in the past, and up to as late as the year 2020, where I just hate a card because it never saves me. But at the same time, I don't know when it's causing my opponent to never even attempt to attack me. If I die with Taiyaki Fanatic on board every game, but it's never turn 2, right? Or it's or they're playing around Taiyaki for multiple turns and I just don't realize it. Like, it's stuff you kind of take for granted.
Yeah, and I guess I'm baking in there that I probably wouldn't be afraid to attack into a Faith Shield in almost any circumstance, but maybe there are people who are, right? So I don't responding to chat here. No, I don't. There's no way they're doing a ban list update before Nats. There's 2 weeks. There's been no events besides. There's been a bunch of in-store provisionals, which are cool, but not something you're going to ban cards for.
Yeah, there's been nothing to test. Like, nothing from set 3 would be banned before it's in an actual event, right? And then they would have had the opportunity to ban. Like, the only thing I could think of would be like Alleyway Ambush or a Crow and Frog from the Toga deck, and nobody was really complaining about that. The whole time I was casting that event, people were like, "Oh, look at this Momo. She survived 4 tongue whips in a row. This is ridiculous." And it's like, literally, we're resolving the lethal Alleyway Ambush, and they're still talking about tongue whip from like 3 attacks ago.
Yeah, and if they were going to do anything, the reason Ready Get Set came up internally in Rochester was like they changed the mulligan rule, right?
Yeah.
So to the extent that Ready Get Set Go is supposed to help player 2, how necessary is it? And is it so necessary that we need to like make 3 symbols arbitrarily just better at going second than the other 9? Like,
yeah, it's super funny. I had a game. I can't remember what deck I was playing. I'm assuming it was an air deck, but I had 2 Ready, Get, Set, Go and like 5 non-foundations. And it was the kind of thing where I'm like, I should probably send one of these Ready, Get, Set, Go back, but I didn't. And I pulled like 3 foundations out of the next 5. Yeah. And my opponent did not build 4. You know?
Yeah, and that's gonna happen more now. Yeah, it's funny because like there's the theory of that card and going second, and like the reality of it also shares too with seizing the advantage, and so it might get pushed out of decks just because like it's not really an action select, like it's like, but it's still like kind of it's still watering down your turn one going first draw, right? Yeah. Specifically, but yeah. In any event, they didn't seem interested in doing it with the rule change, so we'll see if we'll see if the Nats top list is still a bunch of ready get sickos symbols, siding it in when they go second, siding it out when they go first.
Yeah, it's. I feel like if I'm playing like a 50 card deck, I'm still always down to jam it because I've already prioritized just having a smaller deck size, and then it's a +1 high block at worst.
Yeah. The worst thing is if you're, I'm still like back. I have an Air Giro list that's sort of in progress, and I'm back and forth on ready get set just because like if I'm running 3 or 4 seizing the advantage and my turn one opening hand is now 2 actions, 2 attacks, and 2 foundations, I have to throw that away, right? And you sort of set yourself up for those going first problems.
I've seen it in action once. The seizing the advantage Giro is surprisingly annoying.
It helps her a bit. Yeah, it's not too bad.
That extra stat bump is like so not really the issue, but like the fact that she's getting like a +4 stat pump almost to a card usually from that, like +2 speed and +2 damage is what I've usually seen, right? But like so seizing the advantage has been everywhere. Like the little bit of testing I've done, I've played almost exclusively against seizing the advantage, and I've played against a Chaos Tokoyami that, boy, it wishes it could play that card.
And so like that's sort of, I said this in the Discord earlier, if Nats was tomorrow, I'd just run that. Giro's just like a safe blue chip pick. She doesn't have any awful matchups where she gets blown out or anything like that. She can race whatever. If you're up against an aggro deck that's maybe faster than you want to average, you still might win the race. You're gonna be at least 40% against everything basically. So
yeah,
it's kind of a nice safety pick.
Yeah, I think if I had to run it out tomorrow, I'd be playing Kirishima 2 with 4 copies of Seizing the Advantage and 4 copies of Hardened Jab. Because all of a sudden, a 5 mid 5 Hardened Jab is no longer the breaker sponge it used to be. And even on top of that, like, Kirishima has no issues playing on a 4 and then a 6. Like, as long as both of those aren't 3 checks, he's totally fine.
Yeah. And he gets bigger now too. The interesting thing about Kirishima, and I know they were talking about the draft picks the other night on the Unfun Stuff show, and the interesting about Earth Kirishima is that there's competition now, in terms of like if you're gonna play Earth Kirishima, you could consider playing Squabble Kamui. You could consider playing Sato and getting that extra ability on Baker. You could be playing Earth Endeavor, who feels some of Earth's souls. You could be playing Earth Ojiro. Right? So, like, whatever Earth Kirishima deck you're looking at, there's, like, 4 other possible characters that could be like, I like what this is doing a little bit better.
Yeah. Endeavor has a specifically fun matchup, is how I'll put it, into, like, Electric Jolt decks a lot of the time. I struggled. I tried out, like, I had like a Stun Grenade Ochako, not like the all mids one, but just like a Fury package Ochako, and like every Nitro Ignition was just going to eat the -4 damage, and I did not have any pump anywhere on my board, right? So like he was down to just pay 2 life and basically make my attack nearly useless. I think I had a tight-lipped one time. We got to fight over that. Like it was not a good time. Yeah. And then on top of that, Endeavor has the only speed hate on an Earth character, and pretty much on the Earth symbol in general.
And evil as well, right?
Yeah, I guess so. Like, Mineta 1 doesn't count. Fuck that character.
Doesn't count that much, yeah. He's probably better than, like, the play rate that he gets, but, The so, and if you're one of those people that's mortified of Tokoyami because you think Twisted Azure Inferno is like a 17 out of 10 day -1 ban, play Endeavor, give it -4 damage, and laugh.
Yeah.
Like, so he has a lot going for him. In addition, Ojiro is obviously going to be more explosive than Kirishima when you get those hot draws. Kamui Woods is going to wall people out better. So Kirishima's still like the all-rounder of the group, but people who have different inclinations might go one direction or another.
Kirishima comes with the crutch of the response, is how I feel.
Right.
Like, I feel like no matter what, I'm not getting Pippa smashed out of nowhere as long as my character is ready. And so, like...
That's what you think. I've been Pippa smashed for lethal on Kirishima.
Yeah, you've had to respond twice.
I was at 19, and it sure was coming for 38.
Okay, well...
All right.
Fair enough, I guess. I was thinking like I would have it during any attack. I didn't think of it actually being double my health, but that's a good point.
Yeah, you said Pippa Smash. I'm like, no, Pippa Smash is big enough. Not much else is.
Yeah, Scavenger was in my chat, if you know that. I always get weird about using people's real names if they're not like actually on the show, but so they were in my chat earlier talking about taking basically Pippa Smash to standard, but with Perfect Evolution, the Kaden card, so it just gives damage equal to the powerful rating. And I was like, bro, just play a card that gives momentum instead. But
yeah, right, like it doesn't need more damage. Like, that's funny, but very unnecessary.
Yeah, but I guess with that card, if you get like 2 or 3 of those out turn 1, you get to double up someone's health total pretty easily. And it would let you play around damage resets, like a You're So Obvious style play. So I guess there's probably merit to it, but man, that just seems like the ultimate Timmy deck. Like that's gotta be our game's version of like mono green Stompy if I've ever seen it.
Yeah. It's almost, it's kind of Johnny Combo. You're kind of setting this up, right? You're setting up your one-hit kill.
Yeah.
And to clarify, people don't know, Pippa Smash is this Earth All Might 1 deck that is all in on just drawing lots of cards because you're All Might and making momentum and drawing more cards with Howard's Impact Cyclone.
Yeah.
And as long as you don't get blown up within the first 2 or 3 turns, you probably get yourself to this place where you have like 6 momentum. And you play a Detroit Smash, and it comes for... I've heard numbers as high as like 120. It comes for ludicrously insane damage, and you just need to figure out how to make it fast enough with its EX balanced versus the powerful balance versus whatever speed boost you can put on it.
And now you get one with nature to beat plus ultra, because that was always like the deck's biggest weakness. So now you can... If you can turbo out like 2 or 3 copies of one with nature, All Might 1 has the cards to discard for that. So
one of the things that was always funny, and I guess we never got to see it materialize, but Momo can't do anything about that deck. She just dies. Like, he can't do a whole lot. He needs to pile up enough speed hate.
Yeah, when I ran in, so I tested it a little bit, and I was struggling to get the speed necessary if Momo got Net Gun Surprise.
That was the kryptonite. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep, that usually comes in out of the sidebar, but yeah, that is a card.
Yeah, and I in competition, like in actual provisionals and in testing, the amount of times I've seen a Momo remove a ready foundation on turn 2 to pick up a Net Gun Surprise has been incredibly tilting. I mean, like, I've had a Momo like build 2 and an asset, and then going second, and then just go, okay, well, I guess I have to just pick up Net Gun before doing anything else and hope I check a 5 on this block, and like it keeps them alive. It's the most tilting thing of all time. But so that's that was something that I think Tam and I also talked about, was like if we could actually get the Pippa Smash to like a more cohesive, more protected, I guess, style combo. But it was still really reliant on just really specific attacks. Like, it really wasn't the kind of thing where you could substitute Detroit Smash or Howitzer Impact for like any part of the turn, I should say. But I don't think that's a deck I'll have to worry about too much at Nationals, because right now my short list personally is basically 3 decks. These are the 3 decks I'm considering at this moment, and it is any deck that can play 4 copies of Tape and plus Ultra, which is probably Water Kamui if I'm being honest. You still get all the same, like, Water has access to basically everything. It has shitty keyword hate, but it still has it. It has speed hate, it has damage hate, it has combo hate through, face downs in your card pool. It has everything except like life gain, and it even, I think, still has like a card or 2 to do that. But just having like the zone changing and nullify. It's also got access to nullify, and I can sideboard recovery time if needed. So you have a lot of different angles covered. And then your offense is kind of just on rails. You build up a big stage and you have mostly low ranged attacks. I think you can build a pretty solid mono ranged lineup. I don't even think I was including Frigid Heatwave at one point, because if I'm Kamui and I have...
You have a 7 hand size anyway.
And you have Exhausted
Excavation.
And
you don't really... If you're going for like the heavy defensive water build, you really, really, really want to be running Cheerful Uppercut.
Yeah.
So, that kind of makes it hard to start running Frigid Heatwave. But yeah, that's certainly a deck. You're talking about in terms of you playing stuff, decks that you would run, right?
Yes. Yeah. But it's basically 4x Tape and 4x plus Ultra mainboarded, and then it's Earth with whatever can play Seizing the Advantage the best, which is, I'm still iffy on Hardened Jab. That might be like a fake cutesy combo, because Hardened Jab is still like super meh on the stats. And like, I've been waffling between playing like lineups that play the Hardened Barrage Rapid Speed Punches versus ones that play cards like Relentless Barrage and Tetsu Thrashing, because one is technically way more consistent, but the other is just way more powerful. It's not 3 mid.
Yeah, right.
And then the last one is probably any Chaos deck playing Extendo Hair, because Chaos has had really solid defense, but it has no cohesive offensive game plan other than like stun you out. But now with One With Nature out, you can run a really heavy string where you just say, okay, it's going to take every card in my hand, but we're going to do it.
I've been looking at, I haven't built it or tried it yet, but I'm thinking about Chaos Death Arms a little bit.
Yeah, Chaos Death Arms
he's pretty good with Extendo Hair, and up until that point you get to run some throws to make your momentum, and you get to run Cheerful Uppercut and be happy about it. You have to keep your foundations supplied somehow, but
yeah. I had a game on earlier on my stream where I was playing Toru 1 on air versus an Earth Death Arms, and it was just the kind of thing where like between Proud Scion, Death Arms himself, and like freezing my foundations because it was Earth, it was using the Endeavor card to freeze things. I had to just say, look, I'm gonna tap out every turn, but I'm just going to barely win this race because I get to block one thing for free. And it worked out, but it took both players like checking 3s constantly, and like 6 hand size problems to come up. So I'm really personally adverse to 6-handers. Like, if my 6-hander doesn't have card movement, card draw, any recursion, it's hard sell for me. Yeah,
so normally I don't have... My short list isn't very short, right? I've got the Geo I've talked about. I'm up to 6 different Ojiro lists named after Pokemon. I'm obviously not going to find time to try them all, but it's kind of easy to just spit out like, oh, what if we do this? Oh, what if we do this? Oh, what if we do this with Ojiro? Between his 3 symbols and the different lineups that they offer. But so certainly looking at some Ojiro stuff. I I would like to try that Death Arms that I talked about. I would like to look into some Fire Kirishima. Certainly Cognizant of Earth Kamui as an option as well. I've been definitely in the market for one of those super defensive water decks. I have a hard time trusting the like low zone overload, but I'm aware that it's probably good. It's hard to be like, man, I'm just going to put my cards face up on the table. All my attacks are low. Yeah. And you can run a couple of Think Fast to spice that up a little bit.
Yes.
But it's still a little scary as the sort of long game. This is mostly, I had an Ibarra that was doing this when Ibarra first came out, and it just, you know, if they know they just have to hold low blocks, like a good player can just hold the low blocks usually.
Yeah, the Think Fast Ojiro is something I built on stream as well, and thinking back to the list, it's so bad. Like the one I made is just awful.
Yeah. Kevin had this cool idea, and this is one of the 6 Ojiro lists I've built. Is you're not using Think Fast necessarily, but you are playing 4x Spinning Kick and 4x Tape Swing.
Yeah.
So like, you're almost a mono low deck. You have like 1 or 2 cheeky highs and 1 or 2 cheeky mids. The quote unquote cheeky mids are Karate Chop Stun 3s, and the cheeky highs are Cannon Blast. So that seems okay. Yeah. And then everything else is some low bomb, but.
I think I mentioned it in one of the Discords too. I don't know if you saw it, where I was like, you could run Think Fast and probably for like at least half the day just act like Ojiro doesn't say printed on him and get away with it. Just wait for your opponent to actually read the card.
Yeah, Order Ingenium's an interesting one. I don't think I'm going to have a chance to work on him, but I am a well-known Ingenium believer. And he got Extendo, Hair Strike, and Engine, which are both very good for him.
Yeah, Ingenium with Extendo Hair is actually super interesting to me. Like, the idea of just telling your opponent, look, you can play enhances, but it'll only get worse for you is really funny to me, but it seems like the classic design of, if I give my opponent the option, it won't end up working out.
Yeah, they'll figure. Yeah, it's not like an all-in plan. It's just one of the tools in your belt after you're done peppering them with 9 speed, 9 engine boosts, right? Like,
right. Again, though, for me personally, just because I'm not good at it, playing the 6-hander is just such a deterrent for me. Although he does get passing the torch symbols, and that matters. Yep,
he does usually first enhance passing the torch. You want to play an enhance, I'll draw more cards. Yeah. I did a list of that really quickly, and I didn't have any high blocks, and I was like, I don't want to figure this out right now. That's
not gonna work.
That's me with Order so far this set.
Yeah, I don't think I've played an Order deck in set 3 actually. That was something I was trying to make work in set 2, because like, God, look at all the sick cards you get.
Cool
Heroic
cards,
Lineage.
Do you know how much stuff Drowning and Resentment works against now?
Oh man, those Ojiro decks are pissing me off, man. I'm about to.
Yeah, right.
I'm trying to.
And it hits Ignited Arrow too.
Yeah, I'm so tired of these decks just like plugging something from their discard pile into play. I'm over it. All right, I think I can move the logo off your face. That should be better. Yeah, Order has like great linchpins for defense, like Fulfilled My Duty. It has a smattering of damage reduction with self-sacrifice. It's got what's the other one I'm trying to think? Oh, it's got cards like Electric Jolt and Shock Treatment for like defensive targeted committal and things like that. So
yeah,
it's another symbol that's like really close to having just about everything. But then when I play the decks, it has none of the grease, none of the lube. It's got very little card pool clearing. It kind of gets momentum in a fair way most of the time, unless you're like literally danky, you know.
Yeah. So yeah, you have to be one of those characters that just happy to land one move around, right? The Ida 2s. They're like, well, I'm going to put 4 speed on something.
Yeah.
And you're probably not blocking it, and I'm going to take my 6 damage, and I'm going to build and pass. Right, yeah. And we'll get you to 12, and then we'll figure out how to kill you.
Yeah, playing Order Danky was like super frustrating because I would go, all right, cantrip attack. I've got all the gas in the world, but if I go to play my jolt on a 6 and I check a 3, like I can do nothing else for the rest of the turn. And a lot of times I needed to actually commit my foundations for damage or speed. Like, fusion gives 2 speed to burst, but that counts as 2 damage as well. So like you're missing out on 4 points of stats by having to tap those cards. And Order as well as Chaos both, I think, suffer from just like all the really good gravy is 5 difficulty.
Yeah. The because Jolt's a utility move, Hijinks kicks a utility move, Reciproc sends utility move. It doesn't have the tongue whips, for example, right? Twisting Azure Inferno has Chaos now, for depending on your list. So there's that, but. Chaos, it depends on what you're running, right? You can be doing Meteor Shower things too, but overall, I'm still, I'm going to see how much testing I can get in. I'm not a like online every night slamming TTS games sort of deal. Like I probably should be, but
I'm trying to
play other video games, like I do other stuff with my life. But usually, we were talking about sort of just going through what we might see at Nats. As a segue, and I usually, personally, sort of when I think about the field, I usually try to think about sort of 3 groups of decks, and one is, what's the most aggro stuff that could try to blow me up, and ideally, can I make sure I can race them, even if I can defend against them a little bit. Sometimes you're just going to have to race these decks, but if you can't race them, are you really sure that you can defend them most of the time, right? Yeah. And then on the flip side, there's what are the so in this form, that's like the Ojiro, Ochako 2, Toga. There's a bunch of different shapes of it right now, which is a little rough. Tokoyami, obviously. Deku 2 even, right, might show up and just try to stun you out.
I got blown up at my Provisional Store Championship the other night. Like, I just had 2 mid blocks, and he was like, all right, sick, I have mid attacks. It does not matter, you're stunned out.
Stun 2, stun 2, stun 3, what do you want?
Yeah, like just... double 1 with nature, and like he didn't even have to discard for the +2 to the block mod. It was just the fact that everything is +5 damage now. I'm just gonna run out of blocks.
So there's that stuff on the, and then the flip side is like what are the dirtiest wall decks? And usually these extreme decks aren't necessarily what's winning, or they're like modified versions of them, right? Like they're the deck that can be really aggressive, but can also defend a little bit and play a longer game. The deck that can be really defensive, but can also speed up its clock a little bit and be proactive. But there's still going to be people who run it just whatever makes them die less, right?
Yeah.
And not even thinking about how they're actually going to win the game. You're always going to have those players, the recovery girl lists, right? So, there's going to be recovery girls around and about. Somebody's going to be doing it. And it's not... It won't even be about winning. It's just going to be about making their opponent miserable for an hour. Right? Like,
and
they'll win some games too. You will inevitably win someday with a recovery girl, probably.
Generally, players will just give you the win at like the 40-minute mark. Like if they don't have an actual way to beat you, they'll still just play their hand out and hope that you don't back.
The average Swiss round player will eventually just gift wrap the game for you. I've never been comfortable counting on that, but I'm aware that it is something that I could count on if I was smarter.
I'll say what's weird for me is I have a really bad bias. I've definitely not tracked the stats, but I feel like I've gotten to those points and I end up winning those games when I don't expect to. Where I'm like, okay, well, I've waited till I have 6 attacks in my hand. Like, it's really not going to get any better for this, and it doesn't look like I'm going to win on board, and then it turns out my opponent has, like, incredibly bad block zones, right?
Yeah, right.
So I've been very lucky, and in my hero, that has toned down a lot. Because, every card has a block, so people aren't drawing random non-blocks and stuff like that. And then on top of that, like, the amount of pressure you can put on someone's staging area is usually pretty significant just from having stats of your own. I've never put more stats on stuff than I have in my hero. I think I was making fun of Jose the other day because we were talking about Kuwabara's response and how, like, I never cared about the response part. I thought he was banned because of his ridiculous interactions with Princess Perry, which is now also banned anyway. So like you could probably bring him back like just normal. Like I don't anyway. The response.
He still just like arbitrarily eliminates decks though, right? Like you still just like can't play Lilith.
Yeah, or
if
the
you think you're gonna face a
multiples.
Kuwabara, right? And it's just yeah.
Yeah. So I was cool with him just shitting on Reverberate decks, and it's funny he can play it. So
look, if the response was only playable during Reverberate, I'd be okay.
True. Yeah. Return this face down.
Return this card named Reverberate just for the damage.
But so I was just fooling around, and I was like, look, man, every deck I've ever played has sent basically vanilla stats. Like from the time I started playing the game, I played Shield Ram without Robot Masters. Most of the time I played it on the air symbol. So like, if we didn't have Flood Energy Cores out, this is coming at you for 4, and it's fine. When I was playing Dimitri, I would almost always prioritize negative Stolen. Playing Tim Keefe 2, if it doesn't buff itself, it's probably just getting one with Natured, and it's fine because we're stringing them, right? So I've always been like a string flow type player. And with my hero, like you kind of got to be pushing all the buttons. You got to be kind of adjusting both speed and damage, I think.
Yeah. The presence of the big like -3 speed hate buttons, right, that are just always usable, and on top of stuff like release. It's one of the decks I've sort of shelved is the Void Eraserhead using the Eraserhead 2 lineup. And the problem I ran into was that his first attacks aren't like that much smaller than his last attacks, unless you're throwing your whole hand away to Prone to Dry Eyes, and then you'd better be killing them.
Yeah.
Right? So
yeah,
what happens is that when your opponents catch on to this, they block the first attack every time. And they can block the first attack every time because there's enough speed hate and everything has block zones, and there's stuff like Faith Shield that, like, if they just decide they are never taking your first attack, they get to never take your first attack. And they will sometimes be able to not take your second attack. And Eraserhead is not... He has good defense and stuff, but if you're playing a third attack and you're like behind a little bit, right? You're behind on build or whatever because of the way the game started. You have to commit 3 to your third attack to slap them for 6 or whatever.
Yeah.
That's like too compromising of a position, so it's just really hard to get chip damage in. And so I got stared at by Backdraft for 45 minutes. And I was like, yeah, I mean, I won this game by bamboozling him with a nullify character negation, but like, this isn't a functional offense.
I forget who I played against, but I actually played Blackdraft. I actually played Backdraft against someone. Someone had built a Backdraft deck, and I was just hanging out, practicing for the provisional store event. And I was like, all right, let me just hand me a deck, And it did surprisingly well, but it was like 100%. I don't think I activated my character abilities a single time. I don't think I activated -2
it's one of those hidden static things, right? Where, it's mathematically not that exciting, but your opponent still, in practice, it still demands some respect if your opponent's taken any damage at all, right? Just because, like, if every attack in that deck puts something in your card pool, just about. So they play one attack, there's 2 cards in your card pool, so they flip the sticky balls. It's like, okay, well, if I block this, after the next attack, there's going to be 4 in my pool. Yeah. And if he really wants to, he can put 5 damage on it. He might not even care, right? He might just slap me for 5.
So
and it's just this. It's kind of hard to fight against.
I just face tanked like everything from getting stunned out and just having bad block zones, and they didn't kill me. And then my kill string was like Tongue Whip, ambush, 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 and then I used the +5/+5, and I realized afterwards that all the ambushing I did actually just gave them ready foundations that they could have actually blocked if they had a +1 mod. Like, I was just like, oh, I actually win if I just don't press this button, like, ever. If I just play vanilla.
Yeah, although, like, the +5 is still a net speed gain on that one attack, right? But it better be your last one.
Yeah, no, it was the combos off the ambushes.
Yeah, you need to just not press the combos, yeah.
If I just don't press the combos and I have, like, one other card pull clock, like even without that, like just that one card pull clock, because they were tapped out. Like
you press the combo button one time, right? Like
exactly. So it was just really funny where I was like, man, I haven't used my character. I guess I will, and it still worked out. But like, it's funny how this game goes sometimes.
Yeah, so it's definitely like the sort of limit testing is like, all right, if they just want to defend forever, can I kill them without just waiting for them to screw up, right? Yeah. Can I beat a Momo without Momo making a terrible mistake and selling out to a non-lethal string? And if you can't, well, do I at least have like nullify or capture evildoers or something to make her seemingly, at least have a hand trap or something to try to bait her into a backswing or something. Yeah. But so there's a Momo with Kamui Woods, right? The infinite hand sizer with Kamui Woods, a recovery girl, of course. The whatever, pick your water, I want to block forever deck, and flood your pool till the end of days, whether that's Asui, Kamui, Yabara, Toru 2, whatever. And then, of course, Mineta. So I was like thinking about those two extremes, and like, if I feel pretty good at my matchups against the two extremes, then that deck's a candidate. And then you want to just start going through like, okay, what are the counter decks, right? What are the stuff that might just randomly just be an awful 90-10 matchup because of the way the characters interact, right? Your Midnights, your Eraser Heads, your Toru 2s. To some extent, we talked about Endeavor versus Twisting Azure Inferno, Kirishima 2 maybe, right? Things like that All Might 3 maybe even in some cases where it's just like, well, if I see this, I'm going to lose.
Yeah.
And you can, depending on what it is, right, you can have one of those or two of those or something, but you don't really want to have too many of them. And you don't want it to be something like Toru 2 that's going to be everywhere. So I'm just like off of Tokoyami's because Toru 2 seems so popular. And you can beat it, right? If you have the right attack string, she can't actually bother you that much. But like, it's not like Tokoyami's so much better than the other aggressive options that, now that we have seizing the advantage, fire is not the only symbol that can sort of climb over those late game walls better than the other ones could. Right? You can play an air deck or even an earth deck on the right character, and still feel good about your ability to beat those defensive decks.
And I think it's something that fire maybe had over other symbols before that. It might not as much as stun. I know that chaos still had really good stun as well, like from the ice walls.
The ice wall into javelin line specifically was, what put me on Tokoyami initially, and then at the end of the format when my attempts to play good symbol decks fell apart. And just like kept bubbling out with stuff. So like, all right, whatever. We'll play Tokoyami again. I'm actually 5-0 against these Momo and Kirishima decks. So whatever, we'll just run it back.
Yeah, right? Let's do it.
Yeah.
Speaking of trying to play the good symbol, we've got to the rescue now. So the good symbol can seal foundations. Is that are you down to try out the good symbol again now?
So. If it's a Staff Strike deck, Taiyaki Fanatic's good enough for your purposes.
Okay.
Mostly. Unless it's Night Watch, right?
Mm-hmm.
The All Might 3, I kind of just copiumed myself into being like, you know what, I'm just going to stun their whole board out. And that's going to be, we're just going to turn their whole board sideways and it won't matter.
Heroic Strike is a hell of a drug, man.
Yeah, something. But, so like, I played good symbol decks twice. And the thing that was even more frustrating was just its defense is just like Specialist of Sound and some nice block modifiers, and
you get to
your opponent just kind of gets to do whatever they want. And if it's 6 attack, Kirishima drew the Surface of the Sun, just like, all right, you got me, you know.
Its defense is like either it's Specialist and then a good block mod, or it's like getting hit.
Yeah, it's like I'm a 6 hand size. I can take some hits. Question mark.
Like you get. I think you get So Manly, right? You don't get Male Bonding, if I'm not mistaken, but you get So Manly.
I think it's So Manly now. That's probably a good one. That's helpful that it's a unique. So you're not gonna like 2x that, maybe 3x it.
If you're taking an unblocked attack that you self-sacrificed on,
it's fine. Everyone's still playing Crow and Frog. Just take that.
True. Yeah. Man. Crow and Frog, what a weird card. It does 2 really insane things, and yet it still seems really bland. Like, what's the deal?
If you don't check a 5 on it, but you have to check a 5 and be Asui or Tokoyami for that card to feel good, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Because a blank 4 difficulty 4 high 5 that doesn't have progressive is fine, but it's like it's on the edge of your deck, right? If you're cutting it for Twisting Azure Inferno if you need to, right? It's probably not. I wasn't to get Infernos into my Fire Tokoyami deck. I wasn't gonna cut all my javelins,
right?
Because like javelin does a very specific win the game kind of thing, and Crone Frog is just kind of some like nice little oil the wheels kind of thing. Feels really good when you check the 5 and you get to double seal something with your Irrefutable, but that's not always how it goes down. So
my favorite is to change the zone. I'm a big fan of Self-Assured with it and then ready it.
Yeah.
Or like
anything like that. Yeah, it's really cool when you check that 5, right?
Yeah.
But on balance, you have to compare these to what the other cards are doing, right?
And when you're not Asui or Tokoyami and people are playing it, it's always a game plan where you're like so reliant on just typically volume, but other attacks where
Gamer Togas.
Yeah, it's clearly not there for anything other than just sheer inertia. It's
yeah, right.
You literally looked at your lineup and went, all of these attacks left are actually so blank that I want the blankest one.
Yeah.
You're like, I literally will take anything as long as it lets me play another attack. Which is probably why people are so obsessed with Twisting Azure Inferno. When I first read it, obviously so many things went off in my head, and I was like, wow, this card's doing a lot. But at the time I first read it, I also thought it worked with a race response, so it's it's certainly not as nuts as I originally imagined. But talk to me a little bit about it. Are people really blowing over the +1 to the check? Because I've had people describe it to me as a 4 mid 4 Crowan Frog, just because of the +1 to the check, and they never clear their card pool.
Yeah, I mean, it is a 4 mid 4 Crowan Frog that puts a speed on the rest of your stuff, and it will sometimes be a 4 mid 6 Crowan Frog, right?
Yeah.
And that is certainly an improvement over Crowan Frog, but we just talked about Crowan Frog being like the fringe card in your deck.
Right.
It's a good card, right? Obviously, it's a good card, but it's it's. I suspect that most people that are like, oh my god, they played Twisting Azure Inferno and I lost the game, probably didn't lose by like 1 foundation, right? Or like they probably would have lost if it was a Crowan Frog, or like it actually helped them because their Ice Storm was a full block now, or something like that. And so. It's easy to look at the shiny new card that has a lot of text and like lights up like a Christmassy every time you play it and be like, oh my god, that card beat the hell out of me. But that doesn't mean that's not what actually happened. Like I watched like a little bit of Sam's Tokoyami stream and people were mauling about Twisting Azure Inferno in chat after his opponent committed himself entirely out to deal 6 damage and would have died to a stiff breeze. Like,
yeah, there's a lot of times where like the implications surrounding a card make it sound really cool, but like if you're not blocking with plus ultra, it's a chariot cavalry advance where it's +1 speed to everything else and like +1 to your next check to play an attack.
Yeah, and this is like the tongue whip debate the other week where like the argument was basically like, is this card a 12 out of 10 or an 8 out of 10? Like it's definitely an 8 or a 9 out of 10. Like it's certainly a good card. But it's not a like they played 2, you should just scoop kind of card. Like they played 2 pretty good attacks, and you might lose to this string, and it may or may not be because that speed helped them. But like the other card that would be in its place probably would have done something too, right? Most people probably will cut Javelin for it, right? Most people don't care as much as I do about winning long games, but that Azure Inferno could have been a Javelin that cost you the game at some point, so
I think it's really good as long as we don't have can-tripping actions. Once we start having actions...
if we reprint big shots, we're going to have a problem.
Yeah, that's beyond can-tripping there. But, like, there's even, like, a really silly card like I Shall Grant You Death from Standard, where it's like you discard a card and then draw 2 or whatever. It's like a weird looting. I don't think you actually like plus cards. You just get to filter more or something.
I have to search CBS Ultra for this. I grant you death. The Nightmare one.
Yeah, it's like if your attack is nightmaring or something.
Yeah, right.
And so it's, you know, as long as we're not getting into crazy stuff like that, because like Go Beyond costs some momentum and is a 3-check. All the other actions that draw cards, I'm pretty sure, are like not on those symbols.
I'm ready for the 4X living up to his example, twisting Azure.
Luckily, that's a firstie.
Oh, okay. Oh, really?
It's a firstie. I made that mistake. I asked about Denki 2. My pet deck, which I don't think will ever be close to ready for Nads, is Denki 2 dot, but you play the Shadow Emergence card to pick up an action, and then you play Living Up to his example with Extendo Hair. So he can't pay momentum for the EX cost, but you can now discard
sure can pay the card from his hand.
Yeah, so you tap out your opponent completely, and then you like use One with Nature and Extendo Hair to basically send it for lethal through a plus ultra. But that's like a turn 50 deck.
That's a very, I'm trying to break the game by playing a 4-attack kind of deck.
Yeah, that's the kind of thing where you would.
We're only playing other attacks so we have enhanced steps.
Right. It's the kind of deck where if you accidentally put the Extendo Hair into your momentum, you just lose because you're putting random cards on top of your.
Whoopsie.
Yeah. I think I had that. I had like before Shadow Emergence was spoiled, or before it was on TTS. I definitely had like some kind of crazy 8-attack Denki 2 deck, and the first time I played it, 7 of those 8 attacks ended up face down in my momentum, so it did not feel good. It felt really weird mathematically. Funny story too, while we're on the subject, before I get away from it, with I Shall Grant You Death, I was watching 2 people playtest for Standard, and they were playing an Twisting Azure Inferno deck versus DJ. So it's a deck that is like 50 actions, Ailurophobia, and Twisting Azure Inferno, or something like that. And
format's going to be so toxic.
And then the DJnet deck that was basically like, hey, no, fuck you, I have Quan Chi's Fortress, you just lose. Because Quan Chi's Fortress, for those who don't know, says you can't play this card again if I pay 3 life. And DJnet says you basically have to recheck your attack. It's kind of like a Toru bounce, right. If you want to think of it that way. So you start, going, you try to build the castle before you die, and the deck's not super consistent, right, at drawing its 1 attack or whatever. But the thing that's funny about it is the DJ player was like, I am in a position where I cannot lose. You literally will never win again because you'll have to spend X amount of turns playing the same card and not being allowed to play it again. And as soon as they said that, the Twisting Azure player had 1 copy of I Shall Grant You Death already in their hand and drew 2 more. And so as soon as they paid 3 life for Quan Chi's, they burned them for 12 and won a game. It was the funniest thing. I think it like killed them through the DJ had what's it called? Excited for Blood Out. And I Shall Grant You Death actually cost 2 life. And it was like if they didn't pay for the Quan Chi's, they could have just like flipped that and lived, but
yeah.
It was the dumbest way to lose a game I've ever seen, but that's the joy of Standard, I guess.
Yeah, huge format. Everyone's trying to do silly things. There's somebody's going to put 4 of that Katana Foundation in their deck and hope to nail someone with it. Like the flip for health for keywords.
Oh my god, I didn't even think of that card. Do you know how many
I don't know what that card does,
that?
but somebody's going to play it.
Do you know how many games I've lost to that card? It's actually insane.
Oh my god.
I think I lost... I can't remember the timing on it, but I'm pretty sure I lost to I blocked with a Flame Aura, and we were both like at one kind of a thing, and we had to call a judge because they wanted to flip at the response on play, but I have a static when I block, which happens first. And
or the play happens first, rather.
And the play happens first before the block stat. So I actually lost because it has Desperation 4 on it. Like,
yeah.
What the fuck is that?
Yeah, I'm not gonna. I barely have the bandwidth to prepare for MHA. I'm not gonna be able to do anything intelligent for standard. I'm either gonna play some relatively uninspired Tim 2 list just to play that character once ever, or play my Pet Astaroth deck. Not sure which.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of everybody right now. I think everyone I've talked to is kind of like, look, this was sort of sprung on us with like 1 month to prepare with
no like online like online provisionals even for like standard to try decks out, and nobody's running standard locals like.
Well, the standard locals is still in paper, and so like I know a bunch of people who are like, I'm gonna get my cards in person, like I'm gonna buy from Rochester CCG or on Fun Stuff, and have the cards show up at Nats and things like that. So like I know more than one person who's like, look, I'm just gonna run out the dumb funny combo, like attack you on turn 1 because I can again, and I think it's gonna be like half the field is people who are just like, maybe they're not trying to kill you, maybe they're playing Fatality and they're getting momentum and they're doing funny stuff, but like some of the most fun I've had playing standard is like Vicious just flipping your foundation with a Fatality going second. You want to block this Fatality? No, I'll replace it. I paid 3 life. It seems like a fair exchange.
So that's gonna be.
Yeah.
I guess that's Nick Reagan's event to lose because he probably practices standard more than anybody.
I did catch him playing in the standard locals. There is a standard locals Discord. They do it in paper. They run it through the UGN, right? They have it, I think, as a casual.
Well, it's like a webcam event?
Yeah, it's a webcam in paper, like full legality, like, I do think Michael Nelson had I guess I say full legality. He had his own ban list that was pretty close to what they had going. But yeah, I haven't been able to participate because I don't have.
It'll be one of those people that wins then, right? Just like, and kind of hopefully, right, the people that are actually practicing the format,
I want one person to come and show up with a perfected deck. Like, I want someone to be like, I've been waiting for this. Someone we probably never even heard of who's just been stewing over the fact that they bought My Hero cards to play in standard and didn't have a standard to play.
I put a lot of work into the Astaroth deck before.
Yeah.
Before everything kind of halted.
Yeah, I want this to be their moment to shine, Them to be like, I played this deck against myself for 2 whole years.
I've been waiting in my cabin in the woods in Eastern Oregon.
I would love that.
And I got on my moose and I rode it down to Texas.
All the way. Big Blue in 1986 asks, do you think 10 sets in rotation is too many? Do you think that going forward they will reduce the number of sets in standard? What do you think about that, Tim?
I think it's always going to be time frame based. I think because if they start releasing 4 sets a year, then a 6-set standard would be like stuff's gone in a year and a half, right?
Right.
And if standard's supposed to be multi-IP, it's going to be all MHA. So they're going to, I think it's going to be some weird. It's not going to be the most recent X sets. I think they're going to do some kind of forcing mechanism to make multiple IPs in there somehow, and it might even be based on which sets are still available for purchase. Like, that's kind of what we did with the Castle event, was like, well, what sets can people actually buy? And people kind of hate all the characters in Street Fighter vs. Darkstalkers are banned anyway, so maybe we just won't do that one. But
Man, I have such a love-hate relationship with Street Fighter versus Darkstalkers. It came out right after I came back. I took a break, 2018, and I thought the designs were pretty sick. Like,
yeah.
cohesively,
It's a lot of cool ideas in that set. Yeah.
Yeah, cohesively looking at the character cards, they look pretty sick. Playing them with their actual cards, like from the set, felt like garbage. I don't think I've ever seen someone unironically sleeve up Fusion Soul Fist. You know, it's literally Templar, but it costs a momentum.
I had a Fusion Soul Fist Ringman for 1 week before I took Fusion Soul Fist out.
Wait, the Ringman didn't get taken apart? The Soul Fist got taken out? Was this retro?
Like, Ringman's my boy. I don't remember if...
Were those legal?
I might be mixing formats a little bit, but I think they were legal at the same time for briefly, yeah.
Oh, man. There's... Of all the sickness... Of all the great...
I had lost Venom Shot. What was I going to do? No more Haruken.
I was about to say, if it's retro, you have Venom Shot and you have Divine Tribulation. You could be spending that momentum so much better. But yeah, I expect it to be a fairly nonchalant event overall, but given like the nature of standard cards, you know, it might not look super casual with people milling 10 cards and creating.
I wonder if they're going to revive the or make a new sort of Universus Twitch channel because they obviously would not be able to stream it on
MHA CCG.
The MHA CCG channel, but it'd be cool if they could stream it and people who aren't going, because there's surprisingly low sign-up totals right now. I don't know if that's people late rolling or if it's you have to think, like, how is there an extent to which people are sort of, and this would be a good thing, kind of getting their fill of organized play from these provisional store championships, right? Like, I had my big event. It was, at the local store in the city over that we all traveled to, and there were 20 people there, and that was really cool. And so I feel like I have less of a need to get on a plane to go to nationals, and that would be good, right? If people feel like they don't have to get on airplanes to play, but they might not get the kind of turnout for nationals that we're looking for.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. I haven't signed up yet. I'm slow rolling. I have my plane ticket and everything, but I'm still trying to get the finances together. That's why my sub goal still says travel to Nats, because I still gotta
still need the $50.
Yeah, I still gotta put together the entry fee and like money for the room and food and stuff for throughout the weekend. So I'm just kind of flying by the seat of my pants. I'm gonna make it work, but I figure most people are just gonna sign up like once they're in Texas and stuff like that.
I guess there might be people that still think you have to submit your deck list the moment you sign up. Anyone thinks like that's not signing up till the week of, right? So
yeah, that's true. As far as coverage goes, I did poke around and ask about commentary and judging and stuff for the standard Sunset event, and there was no plans at that moment. Nothing set in stone, I should say. Nothing finalized to broadcast it yet. So
Tim Friedlich's probably just going to have to judge it and make a bunch of best guess rulings.
Yikes!
And just be like,
I hate that. I hate that. For him.
Because they're not going to update the LGR. There's no way.
Well, I know
right. So it's going to be like, we're going to play with the MHA rulebook. Here are the 6 major things we're going to roll back to make it more like gold standard. And if something comes up that's some kind of interaction between multiple and the MHA rules or something like that, we're going to stitch it together. And you're going to have to deal with whatever ruling Tim Friedley makes or whomever. And that's kind of fine for one-off of it. That's kind of how they always did legacy events back in the day. It was just like, look, we're not actually going to sort this out.
Yeah, no, I just know Tim hates stuff like that, and I don't blame him. And so, like, it would be hilarious to me if someone actually played Purifying Chime versus True Form All Might, and we had to call a judge to figure out what happens to the character card, which I'm 90% sure nothing happens. I'm pretty sure it's place on top of is meant to be.
Look, if place on top of ever causes a problem, I'm happy to ban True Form All Might instantly. I was so mad when they put those words on that card and had to make up rules just for that one card.
It bothered me that it wasn't just stacking it for a turn. I thought for sure it was like we just used a different word to make stacking sound more clear. And like, ironically, stacking on top of just wasn't more clear.
I don't... I'm not going to get into conversations related to Jason right now.
I think the thing that actually bothers me the most about it is you lose the ability under him. Like, I put all these...
I mean, yeah, I don't mind saying, like, hey, we need a concept of, like, transformation in our game, but do it for a whole... Don't just do it for one card, right? Like, have it be a set mechanic, you know?
Like Gauge.
Yeah, if Gauge was not a stacking mechanic, but was a transform mechanic, right?
Yeah. Like, it... Which, I mean, I don't know. I thought it was really cool because Gauge is specifically them transforming, right? It's like they're two...
Yeah, that's the flavor of it.
Versions, yeah. And so, like, I'm not the biggest fan of the mechanic, but it's definitely the correct call to apply it to everyone in the set.
In that case, if you're judging that standard event, just I recommend you not read Eugenia and hope nobody plays her.
Oh, yeah. Eugenia.
Those are always the worst rulings.
My favorite. I actually... it's so sad to me that the 2-dot can't be a starting character. I don't think it's that nuts if it was, but...
Is it not allowed? Is it strictly not
It's
allowed?
a 1/1. It's a one hand size.
Okay, yeah, but you could.
You could.
You just lose. Yeah.
You would just lose to Confident Counter Striker any Flame Aura on the spot.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's I do not envy the people who are going to have to judge that event, if only because, like, one of the worst things... So this is its own podcast, so I won't get into it too much, but we're definitely at the point now where, like, the rules have folded in on themselves so many times that it's almost impossible not to get it polluted by, like, some older version, you know? It's almost impossible not to, like, read the rules one way and go, oh, I've played this before, and not get twisted at some point with some interaction.
Yeah, and I think, well, obviously they've done some rules changes in MHA, but they've been mostly like stuff like the mulligan, right? I don't think there have been too many functionally here's how the game plays rules changes in MHA. Mm-hmm. So, you know, hopefully that continues. But for people with memory, but stuff changed from the end of Standard to the start of MHA. Right. And, you know, a lot of that was terminology, but a lot of that was like, you know, fresh start, whatever, we're going to clean this up, we're going to clean it. At some point, they're going to get rid of characters committing to pay foundation costs and throw a riot, right? But
yeah,
that's just there for no reason. I think the next time they want to have an IP-only format, that thing's fun. But
interesting.
Right, like if they do anything else that would trigger like a rules reset or like a big look at the rules for we're going to bring in a bunch of new players for Demon Slayer or Genshin or whatever, I could see that just being right out. That's probably the next time they'll do a bunch of like significant rules changes. But hopefully, just through MHA, we're just going to get like maybe some stuff gets tweaked when they bring in, like they tweaked Freeze, right?
Yeah.
And stuff comes in MHA for the first time, it might work a little bit differently, but I'm trying to think of stuff that was like really, they changed Breaker midway.
Yeah, they changed
There haven't been too many of those. Yeah. Whereas like with Standard, partly because the rulebook handling was bounced around for a few years there, and then there was like a lot of cleanup and just kind of like flip-flopping on Jasco deciding how they wanted things to work and things like that.
Yeah. And then the two biggest issues that we had forever was like, oh, well, I was at this event and it was ruled this way. And that's not really like the best thing to hold on to. Like that's not the best justification for a ruling. And then at the very next event, it's ruled a different way by someone else. And typically, like, I was lucky. A lot of my judges were Jasco. It was, Ryan Pham or Shane Duckworth,
Right.
People like in charge of the, Tim Friedlieb will show up, right? So people who have been in charge of the rule book have typically been there to help us out. But like, that's not 100% all the time. And
yeah, we're hoping to see a set 3. I hope the set 3 FAQ has less like, I'll call it wasted energy on stuff like this is what powerful does.
Yeah.
Right. If the set 3 FAQ can like only contain stuff that like answers difficult sort of like reading, interpreting the card kinds of questions, I think that would help a lot to make the FAQ like a really useful document.
Yeah. In lieu of like, because like I understand you can't like have the resource available where there's some judge whose job it is to 24/7 just handle rules questions, especially from people who aren't in games, right? Like for me, the big issue is like I want to get an official stamp on something before I build the deck around it. I still have not gotten an official answer that if I stack and unstack Joffreys, I can use once per turn abilities multiple times. I recognize that almost all the players I've talked to about it in rules forums agree that it should work. But like the last time I brought it up in front of Tim Friedlieb, he made a face about it. Like I don't know what to, I don't know how to take that. Like the guy who's in charge of the rules went, "Oh, that's weird. That shouldn't be possible." But I don't have an official ruling, so like it's stuff like that where if the FAQ could cover all that, that would be my dream. Where I just know every interaction of a card pretty much before I build a deck on it.
Yeah. It's just always hard to just like go through. It sort of has to be a living thing, right? Mm-hmm. Because like it's really hard to go through it card by card and be like, what are the possible rules questions someone could ask about this?
Mm-hmm.
And then you get the like I saw a Twitter joke at the top of my mind talking about QA testers are like QA tester walks into a bar, orders 1 beer, orders 3 beers, orders 5 different kinds of beers, orders 99 beers, orders negative 13 beers, orders macaroni salad, orders paprika,
right? He's got
and everything works fine. And then someone walks in the restaurant, asks where the bathroom is, and everything's on fire.
Love that.
You just never know, right?
I think a big thing for me is there's some rules that feel like they were put in the rule book so that we wouldn't have to police wording or be like really
the old wood thing, right?
Yeah. The could equals
right. Jasco wanted to be able to use their boomer brains from like old Tides of Vengeance days and use Tides of Vengeance wording on cards. That was never really a good idea, so they just put that in there, right?
Yeah. And the one that kind of like the committing character for cost got me on this, where discard only means from hand, like little stuff like that that's only in the rules, where like it seems like such a small thing once you're
discarded from the hand is just a text saver, right? You don't want to. Right, or you could come up with a bunch of terminologies if you're booting up a new game, right? But we're not. They could have done this at the start of MHA. They're not going to do it midstream,
They could have come up with a keyword or a game.
Yeah, for spending momentum. Yeah, right.
Yeah, for discarding from the card pool, and so, it's the kind of thing where I didn't realize how much of that stuff is just like tacked into the rule books and not like on the cards. Until I started going back out to locals. And so I have locals where Magic players come up and they like want to see the cards. They flip through the cards and they read them, and you talk to them a little bit about the base mechanics and stuff, and it's like, oh cool, so if you did this with this card, and like I'm at the point now where I just go, yeah man, it is really cool, even though whatever they talked about doesn't work in the rules, it's not worth it to
yeah. Right.
To bring them down. Like, if they will never probably play the game, and if they do, by the time they get hooked into the game, they won't care that aggressive temper doesn't actually work with whatever they're trying to do, you know?
Yeah.
So it's really important to make the process easy rather than it is to make the process accurate, which sounds bad, but it's just kind of true.
But yeah. So there's a lot of rules. So some rules are just so that we can have card text that fits on 3 lines, right? And you don't need 7 lines for every ability, right? And some of it is to some stuff like I remember at one point they had to add a rule to support like face down tribal protectors getting blown up or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Because the player intuition was that if you blow up a face down foundation, you don't get destroy triggers.
Yes.
Which is just kind of the natural way to think about that. But if you, by the letter of the law, you could. So a rule was put in so that you didn't, because that way, when players played the game and weren't rules lawyers, their natural inclination would generally be to play correctly. But then you get the rules lawyers that are like, why doesn't this work? Oh, this was changed 2 versions ago. Like, what? When does,
Yeah. And I think, I've recently had the discussion of where does a destroyed foundation, like after this foundation is destroyed, where does that actually trigger? And is it the same as when it enters the discard pile? And I'm fairly certain it's different because after destroyed is still in transit, but I don't know for sure.
I think that destroying is the whole process of putting the card into it. So after it's destroyed, it's in your discard pile.
Okay, because there was...
Yeah, the transit is all just like after it leaves zone or before it enters zone.
Okay, yeah. Because
the cards that are in transit. Yeah.
It's the kind of thing where just like not having a definition for destroy, or like destroy will say like it's the act of a card going from the card pool or going from the stage to the discard pile, and like it's, and then we've got cards that say after it's destroyed, after it leaves, and after it enters, and it's all trying to
so ideally we don't have. I really wish we didn't have or have a reason to have like after leaves triggers or before enters triggers, because then you wouldn't necessarily need a transit zone.
Yes.
Right, but it's because we can have a card leave the stage and go into your deck. Right. That there'd be nowhere for the after leaves thing to happen if.
And going to momentum, right? Like if you add frog kick to momentum, it needs.
Yeah, and like like you could invent a limbo zone for playing cards that's just for playing cards, right? But it has to be a whole transit zone because we have our timing rules are the card says when it triggers, right? Instead of having dedicated like this is when a response window, this is when you are allowed to play instance.
Right, and it's one of those things where I've had players look at me and go, okay, well, it left the stage. Where is it now, genius? And I'm like, it's the transition zone. Like, we got to bring this up now. Like,
it is on the throughway.
I hate to break it to you, Sunshine, but there is a zone for this.
Yeah, so the Magic has the stack, which is this abstract zone. We have the transit zone.
Yeah.
It's not for the same things that the stack is for, but it's the same idea of this sort of abstract place.
And the best part is, it hasn't been considered to have changed zones yet. That's the best part. But yeah, that's another one where you could probably get on.
You could even like call it transit instead of build it up so that this card is in transit and it's not in any zone instead of calling it the transit zone. But then you have cards that aren't in any zone at some times. But if you search all game zones now, right? There's just so many different effects.
Yeah, and so I for one, I'd be down just to, I guess, spend a little more ink, put a couple more words on cards. Granted, that is, like, I'm living in the world where we don't do that already, and in my head it just sounds simple to just put from hand or, whatever the 2 words. Like, if it's just, like, a prepositional
it adds up, right?
Like, I'm down.
But that's about that's about recruiting new players too, right? There's a negative first impression when somebody walks up to your game and you have 10 cards on the table and they all have 8 lines of text.
Right. You have Yu-Gi-Oh text. Like once you have to start changing like the actual size of the font, you need to just make a second card. Like, the craziest thing to me about Yu-Gi-Oh! Is that they'll have a card with like 4 cards worth of effects, and 3 of those effects search up other cards, and it's like, bro, you could have just put those effects on the cards it searches. Like, it, you know, like it'll search up like 3 generic non-effect monsters, and it's like, fuck that, put the effects on the, I don't know. But so yeah, I get the not wanting to have it. I talked when I did my box opening about Engine Trouble, maybe my favorite card from the set, not because of any like power level it has.
I love clean cards.
Yeah, but it's simple, it's elegant, it's 1 sentence, and it has more than 1 ability. Like it's not even limited to just having a single ability. And you know, I'm a huge fan of keywords. When Magic like officially adopted mill as a keyword, I thought, wow, why the fuck did this take 30 years? You know?
Oh, did they go and do that?
Yeah, they stole Commander from the fucking community before they stole the mill word. Like, now...
I assume in UVS, if they were ever going to term that, it would be probably burn, given the way we associate with the fire symbol.
Yeah, that would make
burn
sense.
3 cards from your deck.
Burning
or burn
up.
3 cards, I guess, yeah.
Yeah, they adopted a couple others at the same time too. I can't actually remember what they are now, but like Mill was one of them. I think looting might be one now.
It says loot 1 or something.
Yeah, like like they have one now called connive, where it's like after X happens, this creature connives. I think you can now have like a wording where it's like after this happens, loot or something like that.
Yeah, and Magic, you know, gets to partly get in some cases they get to do this because they only have a few that are active at a given time, right? And
yes, yeah, that's
and we're never just the way the Universus game system is like we don't have. I don't want to say there's not the design space to have like rotating keywords like that, but you're always, you know, it's not because we do characters and characters have themes. It doesn't really lend itself to like in this set. You know, white-green has a theme of Convoke.
Right.
It's not a... Like, you can have a few characters that both work with face-up momentum like we had in set 1, but they thought about keywording that even, and then they backed off of it.
Yeah, well, and for us it would almost be, like, always down to traits, I think, because having a set with, like, no powerful attacks would just be kind of lame. Like, it would just be kind of weird.
Right.
It would just be like a weird choice that, you know, because a lot of our keywords are based around like the simple stats of the cards themselves. They're not keywords that strictly interact with other zones a lot of the time. Gauge probably the exception, right? Like every other keyword either like stuns a foundation or modifies this attack in some way.
Yeah, something like that.
Or like multiple creates a copy of that attack, right? Like so.
And reversal desperation, yeah.
Yeah, your keywords are not like.
And part of it is we don't have bodies, right? We don't have creatures that. Yeah, we can't say like, oh, this thing means you tap 3 creatures to do X, Y, Z.
Which I feel like Gauge could have been that. That's my backseat design. Is Gauge should have been like unique to each character. Like Gauge, like you would have like the Gauge effect like on their card, like the character card itself. Which, by the way, this would be like nearly impossible to balance and make interesting. I understand, but if it was up to me, it would be like Joffrey would have like his Gauge requirement would be like an attack deals damage while your opponent has more committed foundations than not, or something. And so, as long as you had the keyword on the attack and it met the conditions, you could do that. Like Selinka's could be like. You know, if you have more removed from game, like you just don't even have to deal damage. But that would be, you know, that would be like every character who's like every deck is already playing like its own game. That would be like every character is playing its own game within its own deck.
Yeah, the only thing I could see is if we were ever in a situation where we had like definitely had sort of cleanly secured. We have 5 different IPs that we want to produce over the next 3 years. Sets for. Then each IP is going to have its like IP mechanic.
Yeah,
this is the most I could see. But
that could be kind of cool, but I don't think we're at the point, like, Magic's at a point where it does that out of necessity. You know, Magic...
Right. You have, like, people expect it, you need to sell your sets.
Yeah. They're at the point
you have to make
where,
the game feel fresh.
Yeah, they're at the point where, like, if they bring back a beloved mechanic, people call them hacks for not coming up with something new. It's actually wild. So, you know, they're like, oh, we're just doing flashback again? Wow. And it's like, bro, they're all kickers. Shut up.
Yeah, one of the kind of the thing, well, blessings and curses of MHA is that they get to go back and sort of just tap old designs for things, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes they're like, let's reprint One with Nature, and that's a little, other times, they can go back and make, like, okay, let's try to do Akuma 2 again, but more fair, and maybe a little too more fair, but, they got to go do that,
Yeah.
And it's sort of, so they can go back to that well, and the 95% of the player base isn't gonna, like, realize that XYZ is a rehash.
Yeah. And yeah, we talked, I think you and I actually were the ones who talked about this, where it's like, when you've got the reprints, right, like Small and Limber is like a reprint from a card from like 2014, but now we're reprinting a card that was like Winning Worlds 2020, so like,
it's slightly little, where
one's like a cool nostalgic hit that like was only really prevalent in a couple decks. Had
we've made an altered reprint that I used to win back-to-back Worlds.
Yeah.
And we've made it kind of worse, but also kind of better.
Right. So it's kind of a weird spot. Sometimes the nostalgia hits, and sometimes it's kind of like a yikes. I got to deal
sometimes
with this.
It's like, all right, slow down a little bit there. Yeah.
It does blow my mind that people are just 4Xing One with Nature, and then I play against a Deco 2 who builds 2 on turn 1, and it's like, oh my goodness. We're actually...
it's funny. It's funny, too, because on Earth, I think on balance, Snack Time's probably the better card.
Yes. Yeah. We were doing the math
the
other day.
Because you're getting, like, 2... You're still getting 2 for each card you discard, but they stack up over the turn. But you do lose the damage, and that matters. But it sort of works like... One with Nature's like so good right now, but it's almost like you want to have like a 2-2 mix if you're an Earth deck or something like that, because you ideally want to have like one of each out.
Yeah, I was gonna say once you get one of each out anyway, you're just living best of both worlds, right?
Yeah,
you're carrying over, the stun carries over, and then when it comes to Snack Time, because Snack Time triggers the other One with Natures and stuff, it's almost always better to just go with that, like, because you're still...
Yeah, the interesting is, like, if your deck can choose to avoid stun hate, then you're worried about running Snack Time, right?
Right. So...
Now, a lot of Earth decks are running Haymakers and can't, if they have stun hate, well, we're triggering it, but...
Yeah. I was... It's kind of funny, too, because... there's one character who, at least right now that I'm pretty sure, like, if you're running Snack Time and all symbol midnight, you get that bonus keyword. So it's
that's pretty cool. That's actually really cool. Yeah.
You get to it's so sad that Somnambulism says printed, man. You can do some wacky stuff with it as your first attack. Oh, Ghoul Magus, thank you for the follow.
Yeah, I'm still pretty happy with Somnambulism committing Mineta. That's we're still okay with just doing that. That's fine.
Yeah, it's fine where it is. Don't get me wrong, but it would be funny.
Yeah, that is a good, because Midnight you off of Chaos and probably even with One with Nature probably still like kind of has this problem of beating the long like dirtily decks. Even though you can commit their character, but it's like a Kami Woods who's so. I don't know if every Earth Kamui Woods does this, but Sean O'Brien's Kamui Woods just, by definition, pays no heed to Deadlock. It's just, if you have a Deadlock Foundation, I will flip it.
Yeah.
I'm building to 20. If you have Deadlock on attacks, okay, you get to destroy a couple Foundations. I have 18 more. They're all face down anyway. So it's like, whatever. So like when... So Jeff was testing his Midnight against that, and the game gets to the state where like Yeah, I can't do anything. So there's no way. Never. You have literally an infinite hand size.
Yeah, I've never seen a Kamui on any symbol give a shit about deadlock for a minute.
Yeah.
I remember Keenan Meadows topped and then got milled out and said fuck it and put a second copy of Frozen in his deck, and then still just built out to 25 in the very next tournament.
Yeah.
And then got beat by internet connection. Go figure. So
yeah, like Water Kamui. So Water Kamui doesn't care, but he doesn't get to be like, I have 4 seizing, I have 4 apathetic, I have 4 hardened jab, bringing these back. I'm even playing Naval Laser Beam. Like, I will flip every single deadlock card you have on Earth. Water, you're like, how many irrefutables did I find? Because if you stacked up 2 basic trainings and a couple other like useful foundation deadlocks, then I might actually be in trouble.
Yeah, Water is hoping to just kind of jump on top of you and commit them down with Frozen before they become an issue. But they've done a good job. They've always, I've seen the Kamui decks playing into like pull no punches and they do fine. I don't think I've ever seen the Kamuis go into deadlock versus like quick creations. And Water still lacks that like full reset, so that could be pretty interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, also notably a card that Earth can't flip.
Yeah, true.
Points for Gojira if the good symbol could defend itself.
Yeah.
We get back to our start here.
You get that once per game seal on Irrefutable if you have to, I guess.
Yeah.
Slim margins. Man, we managed to go everywhere with this podcast, didn't we?
Yeah. We talked about standard and the rules and nationals.
Yeah. We got standard, we got rules, we got game design, we got Nats, we got news updates, we got the UK and the Oceania. I think I'm gonna wrap it up here though, because I think we've gotten a little bit into every pod.
Yeah. We're pretty just meandering. We could meander for 3 hours, so if we don't stop meandering, we'll never stop meandering.
At this point, I want to ask you, Tim, do you have any shout outs, any plugs you'd like to make? Anyone you gotta pay heed to?
Yeah, if you need to pick up cards for Standard Nationals, certainly, or even for MHA, check out Rochester CCG. I'm from Rochester. We also host a mostly weekly show on Monday evenings at Rochester_CCG on Twitch. As much as it has not been consistently every week, we do intend to have it be consistently every week. But if stuff comes up or people get sick or whatever, right? It's it is what it is. But so Monday night we're going to put Ready Get Set Go on trial, and then we'll have a show. We might not have a show the Monday after Nationals if we're all traveling, right? So stuff like that comes up. But anytime there's not something going on that stops us from doing a show, we do a show.
Awesome. Is it still Top Deck Heroes? Is it still up?
Yep. Still Top Deck Heroes.
Awesome.
We found out that doing it on a night that doesn't have the webcam weeklies was much better for getting. Most people watch the VODs anyway, and you can go back and watch the VODs too, right? That's sort of how these things work. But we actually get like more people who can be there live and in chat if we go on Mondays. So we swap to Mondays.
Yeah, and it's one of the reasons I started doing the streaming stuff is because it is a little more fun to interact with people. It's fun to get like the live reactions and things like that. But yeah, for a minute there was always times where I'd want to do stuff on Wednesdays, and then it would be like the one Wednesday where Top Deck Heroes is going on. I'm like, oh, I don't want to crib the guys like the one day they stream. Besides that, like you guys would just get viewers.
Yeah. There was a while there where like. There was like a period over the summer we kind of burned out, and we were like going all these conventions and stuff, and it was like we're just gonna have our Wednesday nights because we're just traveling every other weekend for something or other. So,
well, I am really excited to see that kick into full gear. I'm excited to see more regular content from everyone up in Rochester. I'm gonna be excited to see you over in Nationals, right out in Dallas.
Yeah.
Last thing I want to get from you, Tim, I'm just going to ask, I've asked all the guests this, do you have a prediction for what character is going to win Nationals? I know we've paid attention to fantasy drafts and things like that, but if you had to narrow down to one character who has the best shot at winning, going number one, who would it be?
Overall, I think I'm going to go with Kamui Woods. I think... Okay. I don't know how good he's going to be for getting through Swiss and the big aggro decks, but usually when you get into top cuts, you get more and more defensive decks, and infinite hand size wins those. Usually, right?
You're talking about like the petty squabble, like over the top.
Yeah, the like just like he can gets to 20 foundations, he can actually just block forever.
All right. You heard it here, folks. Go make those Conway Woods lists. Conway Woods guaranteed to win nationals. Keefe said it. It's gonna be an all top 16 Conway Woods.
I definitely did not say that much. It's like if somebody has to navigate through like a mix of Monetas and stuff and still like beat the occasional aggro deck along the way,
right?
He's really good into like the Gamer Togas of the world too. Like there's some aggro decks he just stomps, and some he's going to have some more trouble with. But
true, yeah. And 20 life, if you do get that bad build, right? If you do end up just not finding like the right defensive piece,
Earth Speed Hate is not fantastic, but if it gets set up, it doesn't need Speed Hate.
Yeah. Well, thank you once again for joining me, man. I really appreciate you stepping in here on short notice. Saved my bacon, and hopefully everyone else enjoyed it as well. I think that's pretty much it. I feel like I'm forgetting something, but I think we've plugged everything. I've got my plugs on the screen already. So, yeah, we'll see you guys in Dallas in Nationals, and we'll see you next week here on the channel for Orange Card, Blue Card at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Peace out, everyone.
Good night.